"Hi, sexy. Come and watch till the end." Among these employees is a 25-year-old girl named Nora. Her work consists of guiding new clients to the afterlife and helping them adjust to the new environment. She uses a futuristic app to communicate with them and can even meet them using her virtual self. Despite working for the largest organization in the world, Nora hates her job. But she still continues, hoping that she'll get an afterlife discount when she dies. Following this, we're introduced to Nathan, an inspiring engineer who has a knack for developing new applications. He's driving his futuristic car, which can drive automatically and has all the safety precautions installed in it. A while later, Nathan gets tired of the traffic and decides to drive himself. He then plugs an illegal device into the car and drives it using a controller. Unfortunately, a police drone spots the overspeeding car and quickly chases after it, but being the smart guy that he is, Nathan makes up a clever excuse and digs himself out of the trouble. When he reaches home, he joins his family and his wealthy girlfriend Ingrid. Here, we get to know that Nathan is not in love with her because of her obsession with money and fame. She is also overprotective and clingy, which is the exact opposite of Nathan's nature. Later, as Nathan dances with his niece, Ingrid becomes jealous and interrupts them. She then persuades him into making love with her, which they do in the back seat of his car. In the next scene, Nathan heads to a digitized grocery store and buys a few items. On the way back, his car strangely malfunctions and crashes at full speed against a truck. This leaves Nathan with serious injuries, but he's still alive. Wasting no time, he's rushed to the hospital where the doctors inform him that his injuries are so grave that he can either be uploaded or left to die naturally. Just then, Ingrid approaches him with a contract for his upload, and in a state of panic, Nathan signs it, hence registering himself to the afterworld. Soon he's taken to an isolated room and placed on a chair. Nathan thinks that he's going to be treated, but to his horror, he is decapitated right after he wakes up in the afterlife. The first thing he hears is Nora's voice. She asks him a series of questions to ensure his senses are working fine. She also creates a virtual avatar for him, which includes an unusual hairstyle. In the next scene, Nathan finally wakes up from his delusion and finds himself in a luxurious room. Nora explains that the room is called Lakeview Afterlife, one of the most expensive packages their company offers. She also explains that everything in the package is designed to suit his interests. For instance, there's a bowling alley near the building, but for other customers, it might be a basketball court. Furthermore, Nathan can also make new friends inside the afterlife. All this information becomes too much for Nathan to process, and he starts crying. Seeing this, Nora calms him down, mentioning that he'll get used to the changes soon. She then convinces him to sleep and continues her work with another client. The following morning, when Nathan heads to the kitchen to grab some food, he finds out that in-app purchases require money. However, he cannot pay through his own bank account as his plan is sponsored by Ingrid's family. This is when it dawns on Nathan that Ingrid controls his life now and can even delete him if she wants to later become depressed. Nathan goes to his balcony and admires the lake, then snoops about and discovers he can change the seasons with a remote. After this, he runs into Ingrid's grandmother, who is also using the same package, but she is black and white because her avatar was based on an old photo. He calls his girlfriend on a digital smartphone and learns that she is at a party, which surprises him because he thought she would still be mourning his death. After a brief conversation, she hangs up, and not before saying that now Nathan C. Nora plans to save money for his upload program. But the latter rejects the idea, claiming that he wants to meet his wife in the real heaven. Back in the afterlife, Nathan meets a guy named Luke who is also looking for breakfast. He introduces himself and talks about a strange form of current called the torrent, which is a gateway between the afterlife and the real world. It is extremely dangerous. Most people who cannot get used to the virtual world end up as time goes on. Nathan becomes concerned because the staff calls him Mr. Brown. His hair is too sharp, and there are malfunctions in the afterlife. Nathan decides to end his life. He heads to the torrent to initiate his plan, but fortunately Nora stops him. She requests that he give it a few days, and after a lot of convincing, Nathan finally agrees. She even tells him her real name as a show of trust. A while later, Nora gets off work, and while she's not around, her computer mysteriously deletes files from Nathan's memory on its own. The next day, Nathan is sent to pet therapy because of his actions. He's handed a golden retriever, but surprisingly, the dog can talk. It turns out that a therapist from the real world is controlling the dog, as it's the only way to convey his message and make Nathan feel better. Before the session ends, the therapist gives Nathan an assignment where he has to write the names of 5 people he meets today elsewhere. Nora approaches her boss with some paperwork that states that her father is entitled to the upload discount. However, the boss denies the discount, mentioning that it's only applicable for the employees who have at least a 4.6 rating on their profile. Nora has a 4.59 rating, and despite the difference being negligible, the greedy boss doesn't care. Back in the virtual world, Nathan gets to know that it's his funeral today. He calls Ingrid to know about the preparations, but to his surprise, she's at a spa getting stem cell injections. Agitated by what he just saw, Nathan quickly hangs up and starts looking for new friends to complete his assignment. He meets a kid named Dylan, who died at the tender age of 12 and has been in the afterlife since then. Nathan tries to initiate a conversation, but the kid is too busy fighting virtual bad guys. Later, he meets a man named David Choke, who turns out to be a billionaire. As they chat, David is living a luxurious afterlife to make up for his time in the real world. Nathan tells David that he and his friend Jamie were developing an app that would allow people to create their own afterlife and spend time with their families without having to pay millions. Hearing this, David jokes that Nathan was murdered by the company's owners because he was going to bankrupt them. Nathan is intrigued by the theory, but he decides to ignore it and walk away elsewhere on Earth. Nathan's family hires a detective named Fran to investigate his death, and she immediately finds his car in a junkyard. Surprisingly, the car is still working but refuses to admit that it has been damaged. This implies that someone tampered with the car. Meanwhile, Nora and Nathan are having a walk, where the latter mentions that he has been having memory problems lately. For instance, he cannot remember the app he was developing. Hearing this, Nora recalls the incident where she found a large number of files missing from his memory. She then promises to look into it but gets busy with other clients. She tries to convince them to rate her 5 stars, but each of them refuses. After a business meeting, a guy asks Nathan and his buddy Jamie whether they have discussed the concept with any significant firms. Nathan says only his family and girlfriend know. Nora finds the dialogue odd and investigates it in the following scene. Several news channels are announcing the trial of a groundbreaking invention. If successful, the scientists can bring a person from the afterlife into the real world. This process is called download, and the first experiment is going to be broadcasted globally. Meanwhile, Nathan is getting ready for his own funeral. Ingrid is in charge of the whole event, and she even chooses Nathan's outfits after getting dressed up. Nathan also finds out about the download experiment and gets excited, hoping that one day he can get back to the real world. Soon the experiment begins, and for a while things go according to plan. However, the whole plan goes south when the subject's head explodes. This shocks everyone, including Nathan, but he's still hopeful that one day he will return home. In the next scene, the funeral commences in the real world as well as the virtual. However, Nathan is taken aback to find that the funeral is actually a party and none of the people have come there to express their condolences. Instead, they come to watch a game and socialize among themselves. Even his mother approaches him and informs him that the money they got from his company's share was not much. Nathan is devastated by all this, but he's further saddened that his best friend Jane is absent. Later, an enraged Nathan confronts Ingrid for her stupid planning, but the latter threatens to delete him if he does not behave. Left with no choice, Nathan apologetically leaves. Nora feels bad for him as Detective Fran arrives at the funeral and asks Nathan if he had any enemies, to which he replies no. She then reveals that after he arrived at the hospital, his vitals were improving and he could have been treated elsewhere. Nora returns home and calls the guy she saw in Nathan's memory. The guy introduces himself as Josh but refuses to divulge any more information about the meeting, claiming it to be confidential in the afterlife. Nathan calls his best friend Jamie, but as always, the latter does not pick up. The end. See you later, sexy.